In today's topic, we are going to learn about dynamic constructor. It is very important topic in C++, as we have already learned about various kinds of constructors like default constructor, parameterized constructor, copy constructor, and constructor overloading. But today we'll study a new type which is known as dynamic constructor. As we know that constructors are used to initialize the data members of a class. As we cannot specify values over here in this region to class members, or you can say data members of a class, therefore constructor is used to assign them certain values. And we also know that the constructor name is same as that of the class name. So let's see what dynamic constructor does. Dynamic constructor basically allocate memory to a variable at runtime. That is why it is called dynamic constructor, because it assigns the value to a variable at runtime at execution time, but not at the compile time. That means it saves the memory and it fastens the execution process also. So let's study. First of all, we are going to create a class number. We have created a class number and it is having 3 data members, n1, n2, and we have taken a pointer variable because pointer is required for dynamic constructor. We'll take the value in a pointer variable in case of dynamic constructor. n1 and n2 are normal variables, but ptr is a dynamic constructor and it is it's a pointer and it is used to take values at runtime. That's why it is used. Now, all of these 3 are declared in the private section because by default the value, if we don't mention any specify over here, then by default they lie in the region of private members. Now in the public section, we have declared a constructor number with no arguments. If there are no arguments, then it's a default constructor. You know that. Therefore, here we are going to assign values n1 0, n2 0, and ptr is equal to new int. New int means this is an operator which is used to assign values at runtime. Or we can say we are going to assign integer value to ptr at runtime. This is used for dynamic memory allocation at runtime. Basically, new operator is used for dynamic memory allocation at runtime. Runtime means when the program executes. So in the default constructor, we have assigned 0 to n1, 0 to n2, and we have declared the pointer variable as integer and its value will be a garbage value because it is not having any specific value at this time. Now, we are going to create another constructor, parameterized constructor. You can see here number, int x, int y, and int z, where int x value is assigned to n1, y's value is assigned to n2, and z's value will be assigned to ptr. In the initial constructor, in the default constructor, we have just declared its value. We have just allocated the memory to it. But here, we have allocated the memory and thereafter we have assigned the value of z to ptr. Since ptr is a pointer variable, therefore we need to write here dereference operator. This asterisk is known as dereference operator in C++. That means when we'll print only ptr, it will give the address of z. But when we print asterisk ptr, it will give value at z. This z, okay? So asterisk is used to fetch the value, and if we don't use asterisk or this dereference operator, then it will display the address, okay? Then what we'll do, we have created another function display which will display the values of n1, n2, and this ptr, okay? So in cout, we are going to display value of n1, n2, and ptr. These are messages and these are respective values. The values will be displayed as such, whereas If we want to print the message, then they should be given in double quotes. You can see that. Fine. And here we have closed the class. Braces and then semicolon. We have closed the class over here. Then in the main section, we'll start the main section, int main. Here we have created an object, number object 1. Since when we create an object, the control goes to the default constructor by default. So it will jump to the default constructor over above and will give n1 as 0, n2 as 0, and ptr will be new int. That default constructor will be executed. Then number object 2. Here object 2 is created and 3 arguments are assigned to it, 10, 20 and 30. So the control will jump over here to the parameterized constructor and the values will be assigned accordingly, which I have already described to you. When number object 1 is created, then the control will jump over here and this part will be executed. And when number obj2 10, 20, 30 will be created, then control will go to this parameterized constructor. Fine. After assigning their values, we are going to call display function. In case of obj1, we'll write obj1.display. The control will go over here and display the values of n1, n2 and ptr. In case of n1, it will be 0, n2 will be 0, and ptr will be some garbage value, which we'll see in the output window, because here we have printed a static ptr. And then another call to display is made by using object 2. That means here we are going to fetch the values of object 2, which were 10, 20 and 30. Then control will go to the display function again, and the values will be displayed as n1 10, n2 20, and ptr. This ptr is equal to a static ptr, which is now 30. So these values will be displayed. Dynamic constructor is basically used to assign memory or allocate memory to a variable at runtime. Only this is the concept that you need to learn. Now let's execute this program. We'll click on execute, compile. As there are no errors in this program, now we'll run it. Let me share with you the output screen. Just a minute. This is the output screen. Here you can see the output as n1 0, n2 is equal to 0, and ptr is equal to this. This is some garbage value. And these are the values for default constructor. And there are another 3 values, n1 10, n2 20, and ptr is equal to 30. And these are the values of parameterized constructor. Okay, so this is how dynamic constructor works. I hope you understand the concept. See you in the next lecture.